Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons and love are told. Sit back, relax, and let me take you through a journey that tested my patience, broke me apart, but eventually taught me how to stand up for myself. And don't forget, if you enjoy stories like this, go ahead and like, share with your friends, and subscribe to this channel. I grew up in a house where boundaries were almost like a foreign language. My mother, Linda, had this way of convincing everyone that what she did was out of love, but to me, it felt more like suffocation. She wanted to know every detail about my life, who I spoke to, what I wore, where I went, and even what I thought. Sometimes she'd walk into my room without knocking, rummage through my things, or make decisions that were supposed to be mine to make. When I tried to object, she would say, "Maya, you're my daughter. I know what's best for you." I remember sitting quietly on the edge of my bed, clenching my fists, fighting the urge to scream that I wasn't a child anymore. But every time I spoke up, she'd twist it into guilt. "After all I've done for you, this is how you talk to me?" That cycle lasted for years, and little by little, I began to shrink myself just to avoid confrontation. My friends at school used to joke that I was the girl with no secrets, because my mother somehow knew things before I even told them. I would come home from class and she'd already be talking about a test I hadn't mentioned, or she'd warn me about a friend I had just started hanging out with. At first, I thought maybe she was just being protective, but as I got older, it felt invasive. When I hit my teenage years, it got worse. Linda would pick out my clothes before parties, sometimes even call my friends' parents to ask questions behind my back. Imagine being 17 and having to explain to your friends why your mother just interrogated their families. It was embarrassing. My father, Michael, wasn't much help either. He always took the quiet route, staying out of arguments, pretending not to notice how controlling she was. He would shrug and say, "You know how your mother is," as if that excused the way she micromanaged every corner of my life. I used to stare at him, wondering why he couldn't just step in, why he couldn't tell her that I deserved some air to breathe. That silence only made me feel more alone. As I got older, the weight of her control started to turn into something heavy inside me. I began to crave independence so badly that I would fantasize about what it would feel like to have my own space somewhere Linda couldn't just walk into. Somewhere I didn't have to hide parts of myself to avoid judgment. I wanted to paint my walls the way I liked, eat dinner at whatever time I chose, and invite whoever I wanted without answering to her. It might sound small, but to me that was freedom. The first seed of rebellion sprouted when I got my first job after college. Linda was proud at first, boasting to everyone in the family about her daughter working at a tech firm downtown. But then she started asking about my salary, pushing me to give her access so she could help manage it responsibly. I lied and told her I earned less than I actually did, just so I could save something aside for myself. That lie became my lifeline. For the first time in my life, I had a secret from her. And that secret gave me the courage to imagine bigger things. The thought of owning a house started as a whisper in my mind. At first, I laughed at it because it sounded impossible to me, a young woman with student loans and a modest paycheck buying a house. But the more Linda tightened her grip, the more that whisper turned into a goal. Every time she criticized my hairstyle or guilt-tripped me for not spending enough time with her, I told myself, one day, I'll have my own space. One day, I won't need permission to exist. I started cutting back on unnecessary expenses. While my colleagues went on weekend trips, I stayed behind, cooking simple meals at home, stashing every penny I could into a savings account Linda didn't know about. It was exhausting watching others live freely while I secretly built my escape, but I kept reminding myself of the bigger picture. I didn't want to rent a place where Linda could still swoop in with spare keys, or where she'd guilt me into moving back home. I wanted something that was entirely mine, something she couldn't touch. It took years of sacrifice. I skipped vacations, avoided luxury purchases, and sometimes even worked overtime just to speed up the process. Meanwhile, Linda was always asking where my money went, but I would brush it off saying bills or loan payments. She didn't like vague answers, but she accepted them because she thought she still had some level of control over me. Little did she know, her constant interference was fueling my determination even more. The day I finally signed the paperwork for my own house, I cried in the parking lot. It wasn't a mansion, but it was beautiful, 2 stories with a small garden at the back, tucked in a quiet neighborhood almost an hour away from my parents' place. I ran my hand over the keys again and again, whispering to myself, "This is mine. This is finally mine." For the first time, I felt like I was no longer just Linda's daughter. I was Maya, an independent woman. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents, not even my brother Adrian. I wanted to enjoy the feeling of privacy, the feeling that no one could just invade my space anymore. Moving in was like entering a new world. I remember lying on the bare floor the first night, staring up at the ceiling with boxes still scattered around me, and feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. There was no sound of Linda's footsteps outside my door, no voice asking where I was going or what I was doing. Just silence, the kind of silence that made me feel alive. I promised myself I'd protect this peace at all costs. But deep down, a small voice of fear lingered. I knew my mother too well. Secrets had a way of slipping out in our family. And as much as I wanted to believe I could keep this place hidden, I couldn't shake off the worry that somehow, someday, Linda would find out. 6 weeks passed in my new home, and every single day felt like I was slowly reclaiming pieces of myself I didn't even know I had lost. I decorated each corner the way I wanted, choosing bold colors that my mother would have labeled too loud, and hanging up paintings she would have dismissed as unnecessary clutter. I danced barefoot in my kitchen, cooked meals at midnight if I felt like it, and sat on my porch watching the sun rise without answering to anyone. That house became my sanctuary, and with every passing week, I felt lighter, freer, and more like myself than ever before. I kept the secret carefully. Whenever Linda asked where I was staying, I told her I had found a small apartment closer to work. She tried prying for details, but I stayed vague, telling her the lease was temporary and I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Sometimes she would offer to come visit, but I brushed it off, saying the place wasn't ready for guests. She pouted, complained, and guilt-tripped me, but I held my ground. For once, I was determined not to let her dictate the terms of my life. One Saturday morning, I decided to stop by a local farmer's market a few blocks away. The neighborhood was still new to me, and I wanted to get familiar with the people and the shops. I spent an hour strolling through stalls, sampling honey and fresh bread, and for the first time, I felt like I truly belonged. When I returned home with a bag full of vegetables, I parked my car in the driveway and noticed something strange. The front door was ajar. My heart raced instantly. I knew I had locked it before leaving. With trembling hands, I pushed the door open wider, and what I saw froze me in place. My mother, Linda, was inside my living room, gesturing animatedly as she spoke. Sitting on the couch was my brother's wife, Carla, and next to her was a woman I didn't recognize, probably a friend of Carla's. Linda's voice echoed through the space. "This is the dining area, but I was thinking we could knock down that wall to open it up more. And over here, this wall could use a brighter color. Don't you think so?" I stood there, my mouth dry, listening to her map out renovations in a house that wasn't hers. She was giving them a tour, like she owned the place, like I was just some tenant she had forgotten to mention. Carla nodded politely, while the stranger looked impressed, glancing around as if they were house hunting. My blood boiled. "Mom," I shouted, louder than I intended. All three women whipped their heads toward me. Linda's face flickered with guilt for half a second, but she quickly plastered on her usual defensive smile. "Maya, you're back. We were just what?" My voice cracked. "Breaking into my house. Giving tours to people I don't even know." Carla looked uncomfortable, shifting in her seat. I didn't know, Maya," she said. "What exactly did she say?" I demanded, my eyes darting between the two of them. Linda stepped forward, trying to place a hand on my arm, but I pulled back. "Don't overreact," she said smoothly. "I was just showing Carla and her friend around. You're living here alone. You need guidance. I thought we could brainstorm some improvements together." Guidance. I could feel my hands trembling. "Mom, this isn't your house. You have no right to be here." Her eyes narrowed. "How dare you speak to me like that? After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat your own mother?" I was only trying to help. "You clearly don't know how to manage a property like this on your own." The room was suffocating. Carla mumbled something about leaving, grabbed her friend, and the two of them hurried out, leaving me alone with Linda. The moment the door shut behind them, I turned to her, my voice shaking with rage. "How did you even get in here?" She lifted her chin, unapologetic. You forget I still know people, Maya. It wasn't hard to find out where you were really living. As for the door, the realtor still had a spare key, and I convinced him to let me in. I told him I was your mother, and that you wanted me to check something for you. My knees almost gave out. You lied? You manipulated your way into my home. You're being dramatic, she snapped. This secrecy is childish. Families don't keep things like this from each other. Why would you hide a house from your own mother? Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Because of this. Because of exactly this. You don't respect me, Mom. You never have. You barge into every part of my life and call it love. But this house, this was supposed to be mine. My peace. And you couldn't even let me have that. For a moment, she looked taken aback, but then her expression hardened. Ungrateful. That's what you are. You think you've done something extraordinary, but you're still my daughter. You owe me respect. That was the moment something in me snapped. I marched to the door, opened it wide, and pointed outside. Get out. She stared at me as if I'd slapped her. Excuse me. You heard me. Get out of my house. My voice was steady this time, no shaking, no cracks. Just resolve. Linda's face flushed with anger. Fine. But don't expect me to sit by while you throw your life away. If you want to distance yourself from your family, go ahead. Don't come crying back when you realize you made a mistake. With that, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. I collapsed onto the couch, my body shaking as the reality sank in. She had found me. She had invaded the one place I thought I was safe. And now the secret is gone. The next few days were hell. Linda called repeatedly, leaving voicemails filled with guilt trips and accusations. My father called too, begging me to apologize and make peace, while Adrian accused me of humiliating their mother in front of Carla. Family dinners turned into battlegrounds, and I stopped showing up altogether. Everyone painted me as selfish, ungrateful, and cold. I changed the locks the very next day. I called the realtor, explained the situation, and made sure no one had spare keys anymore. That night, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, I felt both liberated and shattered. For the first time, I had drawn a line my mother couldn't cross, but it had come at the cost of my family's love. The weeks that followed felt like I was walking through fire. Every phone call from my parents' house came with accusations. My father begged me to be reasonable. My mother ranted about how I was tearing the family apart, and Adrian sent cold messages calling me selfish. The weight of it pressed down on me every single day. And though I tried to stand firm, there were nights when I sat on the edge of my bed in tears, wondering if maybe I really was the problem. That's the thing about years of emotional manipulation. It makes you second-guess your own reality. I decided to find help, because I couldn't fight this battle in my head alone. I booked my first therapy session a month after the confrontation. Walking into that office, I felt like a child again, nervous and unsure, but when I sat down and explained everything, my therapist, a gentle woman named Dr. Harper, looked me in the eye and said, "Maya, what you're describing isn't love. It's control." Those words pierced through me. She explained how boundaries are not walls to shut people out, but fences to protect yourself. She told me it was okay to demand respect, even from a parent. For the first time, I felt validated. Therapy became my anchor. I learned how to detach from guilt trips, how to say no without drowning in shame, and how to separate my worth from my mother's approval. I started journaling, writing down every time I felt manipulated or pressured, and then countering it with truths I had learned in therapy. Slowly, I built a new voice inside me, one that was strong, calm, and unafraid. Meanwhile, the distance between me and my family grew wider. I stopped answering Linda's angry calls. I muted Adrian's messages. Carla reached out once, apologizing for being part of that awful day in my living room, and I appreciated her honesty, but I wasn't ready to bridge that gap yet. I leaned instead on new friends, neighbors who respected my space, colleagues who encouraged me, and even strangers at the farmer's market who greeted me warmly. It was a different kind of family, one built on respect and choice. Months later, the unexpected happened. Adrian showed up at my doorstep. I almost didn't answer, but something in me wanted closure. He stood there looking exhausted, his usual arrogance gone. Maya, he said quietly, I need to talk. I let him in cautious. He sat on the couch where our mother once stood, and for a long moment he just stared at his hands. Finally he said, I owe you an apology. My chest tightened as he explained how Linda had started interfering in his marriage with Carla, criticizing Carla's cooking, showing up at their house uninvited, even making decisions about their child without asking. I thought you were exaggerating, he admitted. But now I see it. I see what you've been living with all along. Hearing him say those words cracked something open in me. For years, I had felt like the only one who saw the truth, the only one who understood how suffocating it was. To have Adrian finally admit it felt like vindication. I didn't forgive him right away, but I listened. He asked if we could meet with our parents together, with a mediator, to set things straight. Part of me wanted to slam the door on that idea, but another part, the part that had healed enough to hope, agreed. The meeting took place at Dr. Harper's office. My parents walked in stiff and defensive, while Adrian and I sat side by side. Dr. Harper guided the conversation, gently but firmly cutting through Linda's denials. At one point, Linda snapped. I only ever wanted what was best for Maya. But Dr. Harper asked her, did Maya feel that way? Did she feel cared for, or did she feel controlled? The silence that followed was heavy. For once, Linda had no quick defense. It wasn't a magical fix. She didn't suddenly transform into the perfect mother. But she lowered her eyes and whispered, maybe I went too far. For Linda, that tiny admission was monumental. My father reached for my hand then, his eyes watery. I should have spoken up, he said. I should have protected you. We left that meeting with boundaries written down with clear, non-negotiable rules. No surprise visits. No access to my personal accounts or information. No decisions made on my behalf. Linda bristled at first, but Adrian backed me up, and slowly, she realized the only way to have me in her life was to respect those boundaries. The months that followed were cautious but different. I didn't rush back into constant family gatherings. Instead, I allowed small, intentional moments, dinners where everyone respected my space. Phone calls where Linda asked instead of demanded. Trust wasn't rebuilt overnight, but brick by brick, it started forming again. What I gained most of all wasn't just a healthier relationship with my family. It was myself. I learned that my peace is priceless, that independence is not selfish, and that love without respect isn't really love at all. That house, my sanctuary, remained a symbol of everything I had fought for. Every time I turned the key in the door, I reminded myself, I earned this. I chose this. And I deserve it. And now, as I share this story with you, I want you to know that boundaries aren't cruel, they're essential. Don't let anyone convince you that protecting your peace makes you ungrateful or cold. Real love honors freedom. Real family respects space. So if you've ever felt suffocated by someone who claimed it was love, I hope my story encourages you to stand firm. Find your voice, protect your peace, and don't be afraid to demand respect. Because you deserve it too. And remember, guys, like this video if it touches you, share it with your friends who might need to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to set tough boundaries with family? I'd love to hear your lessons. Moral lesson: true love respects freedom, and true family honors boundaries. Protecting your peace is never selfish, it is strength. When we claim our space with courage, we invite healthier, stronger relationships built on trust, not control.